Okay, the final presentation of this session is entitled Life Cycle Assessment and Socio-Economic Impact of the F-Cubed Product System for Pulp and Paper, Biosludge, Virgin Olive Pomace, and Fruit and Vegetable Wastes, presented by Marco Ugolini. Marco holds a master's degree in Forest Sciences and is a co-founder and managing director of F-Cubed partner CA.RE Engineering, which is a professional association based here in Florence, with expertise in supply chain sustainability assessment and certification, life cycle assessment applied to agri-energy, agri-food, and forestry systems. Marco.
Thank you, Mike, for the nice presentation. So my presentation follows the process model developed by TNO, with the analysis of the environmental aspects and socio-economic aspects of the F-Cube production system. And we perform an attribution of life cycles to investigate these aspects. And this is the process, the amplitude of the process that we are going to study, starting from the extraction of the biogenic residues, arriving to the production of dispatchable power. First of all, the first part of the presentation is devoted to life cycle assessment in F-Cubed, and brief station about methodology. It was follow the standard, ISO standard 14040 and 40044 for the development of LCA, which foreseen the development of 4 steps: the goal and scope definition, life cycle inventory, life cycle impact assessment, and interpretation of the results. The functional unit that we have used, which is the quantified description of the performance of the system that we are going to study, is the kilowatt hour. And it was foreseen by the proposal. And we had, to facilitate the comprehension of the assessment, we add another functional unit which make easier the comparison between the different streams, the ton of residues. The system boundaries is consisting of 4 main squares, main group of processes. The upstream processes consisting on residues extraction, transport to the plant, and pretreatment process. The mainstream process, which grouped the hydrothermal treatment, which is a tar wash technology, and the watering and drying of the biomass, and finally the pelletization, and the downstream processes, which consisting of pelletizing, pellet combustion, and electricity production. Then we have a secondary process of the filtrate by anaerobic digestions, which is secondary respect to the main flow of the process, but it's very important as supporting the feasibility and the environmental sustainability of the whole process. So we face the life cycle inventory, which is the collection of all the data necessary for the consider the input and output to and from the systems, and it was consisting in 6 LCA model and over 1,700 data collected and continuously reviewed with the development of the process. The life cycle impact assessment instead is referred to the recipient method, which is one of the most applied in bioenergy system LCA study, and it consists of 18 midpoint indicators that make the study very accurate. And we used for the LCA the software CIMA Pro, which is connected with the database EcoInvent 3.0. The Recife impact method allowed to list these 18 different impact categories, which have analyzed for each biogenic residue. And you see that some of them are not of interest, are not relevant for our studying. So we make a first selection and reduce these impact categories from 18 to 14. Another selection came from sensitivity analysis to define the reliability of the impact categories that we have going to study. And we perform this sustainability analysis by two steps. First, the analysis of the uncertainty inherent to the model, the LCA model of the EcoInvent database processes. And a second analysis performed considering the variation of the sensitive data coming from experimental phases. And the cross-check of the impact assessment with the sensitivity analysis allows to define the reliability of the impact categories, as we see in the following slides. The FCUBED production system reference cases that have been investigated are referred to pulp and paper biosludge, reference case, and FCUBED production system. The reference case is referred to the smooth fit cap facilities, which it's a mill that produces kraftliner in Sweden. Then virgin olive pomace, in which the reference case was the Frantoio Oleario Chimienti associated to APO organization of producer. And orange peels, the reference case referred to De La Fruit, which is an agro-food industry in Spain. Of course, the FQ production system correspond to the scheme that Jan Wilco showed in the previous presentation. And you have to refer to that scheme for our analysis. So the environmental LCA results consist of data visualization per type of residues, which include the impact category breakdown by production process system, and reliability of the impact categories, the relevant impact categories for LCA study, the details on climate change impact categories, and details on impact other categories if interesting, comparison of FQ production system with the reference case. And finally, the carbon footprint of the FQ production system, which is one of the targets that the project requires and to which we have answered. So we have here the table, not very easy to read, for the pulp and paper biosludge, easiest to refer to the graph. And we see that the bright color shows the contribution of the main process, which refer to tar wash, press cake, and the watering. And you see from that color how they contribute to the whole overall impact for each impact categories. And you see that tar wash usually a small contributor of this. Much more is competing to the electricity generation and the electricity transformation from high voltage and to medium voltage. The reliability of the impact categories by sensitivity analysis consisted of the analysis of the variation of some data, which are very sensitive to our study, and we choose for the pulp and paper biosludge the biological sludge dry matter content, which is very variable, as Dawi before underlined. Then the tar wash electricity consumption, but that it was a data that we esteemed because not available at the moment of the study, the pellet moisture content, and finally the filtrate dry matter content. And as you see from the table below, the reliable impact categories for the study are only the first 5 with a white background. Instead, there are 3 categories at the bottom of the table which are completely unreliable, and so we didn't consider it in the consideration. Just at the end, we studied these categories, including also 2 of that were not so affordable and reliable, as freshwater eutrophication and water depletion, because in the case of paper biosludge, the water system and ecosystem are very relevant. So we make some thinking on that, but the conclusions are not very solid, let me say. On the other hand, the impact categories which were reliable give us a lot of information. This is the most important according to the carbon footprint, and we see that for pulp and paper biosludge, there is a positive impact. In fact, the number is almost 18 kilos of CO2 per single ton of air-dried pulp. And the larger contributions come from the biomass boiler combustions and from the pelletizing phases. And also the low part of the chart shows that also the upstream processes give a consistent contribution to the climate change category. And that's why in this specific case study, we have to consider the wastewater treatment included in the analysis. Indeed, the analysis, the LCA analysis, start from the extraction of the residues and include all the treatments that the residues have to be, needs to be treated, and so the wastewater treatment is included as well. And that's make a difference with the other case studies. Also, another example of analysis, we go in deep with the ozone depletion, because we want to understand why he made a change of behavior from the sensitivity analysis of the model and with the introduction of the sensitivity data from the foreground data. And you see that the main contribution of the impact, which however very low, comes from the nuclear power that is present in the country mix of Sweden. And so uranium and plutonium contribute to the improvement of the impact. And these are external to the technology we are going to study, but refer to the country mix that is available in the single country. So at the end, the comparison between F-cubed and reference case we made we include in the comparison also the electricity country mix, and we see that we have different categories with different reliability, as said before, and so we obtained these results. In case of the pulp and paper biosludge, the comparison is also favorable for the F-cubed systems. Just the agricultural land occupations gives adverse results. And we want to investigate this, why, and we assume that the agricultural land occupation is to refer to the phases that, as for example, pelletization, which can refer to hub solutions. So outside of the mainstream processes, the pellet energy conversion unit can be a solution, can provide this land occupation. Another interesting consideration to do is that electricity country mix of Sweden is very evoluted in terms of share of renewable energy sources, which are more than 90%. And so that makes the comparison between F-cubed and electricity country mix of Sweden unfavorable with respect to F-cubed. But we have also underlined that in case of the Smurfit Cup, and so the mill, they have a closed system, so the electricity that they produce is completely generated inside of the system, and so they don't need to compare with the electricity country mix. Okay, finally, the carbon footprint of the F-cubed system is very interesting, because we defined that the efficiency in the production of the electricity is much higher for the F-cubed systems, which almost 2 times of electricity production respect to reference case. And also the carbon footprint, it's 67% more efficient, more favorable respect to the reference case. You note that from the first analysis, the impact is, however, positive. So we have 1.13 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. But at this point, we didn't consider the avoided emissions to be referred to the treatment and disposal of sludge. And this is mandatory for the paper mill. And so we can avoid these kind of emissions. And in avoiding this data, we obtain a negative result with the same improvement, which in terms of absolute values, but in terms of percentage, is increased to 93%. Okay. Jumping to the olive pomace case study, we see that we have very interesting results in terms of contribution analysis of the single unit processes respect to overall impact of the single impact categories. And for some of them, the results are very positive. But a difference of paper biosludge, here only 3 impact categories are very decisively favorable respect to the reference case. So we have climate change, we have freshwater eutrophication, and we have fossil depletion. The others are less favorable than the reference case. If we extended the analysis to electricity country mix, this time, given the impact, especially the carbon intensity of the electricity country mix of Italy, it's very high. It's 372 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour compared to the 45 grams of CO2 of the Swedish country mix. So we have good results for F-cubed in every impact categories. And so the main results of the comparison is that the F-cubed process present a lower impact category for 3 of them, which are climate change, freshwater eutrophication, and fossil depletion. Extended the comparison, the number increased to 6 or 7, sorry. And for climate change, fossil depletion, F-cubed shows a more performative values respect to reference case with an improvement of, from 2.5 to 3.5 times respect to reference case, indeed. And about freshwater eutrophication, there is a lower impact of F-cubed production system, mainly because in the reference case, the amount of digestate that have, which is land, it is spread in the land of the farms, is much more respect to the amount of digestates coming from the anaerobic digestion in the F-cube process. So we can conclude that F-cube production system provide a significant favorable impact in the areas of protection that are crucial to global climate change. About the carbon footprint analysis respect to reference case, we have also here a higher efficiency in the production of electricity, this times almost 7 times more efficient. And we had to say that there is a gap in the production that have to be covered to make the two systems comparable. And to cover this gap, we calculate the carbon footprint cost, consider the electricity country mix, and we see that this cost is about 700 kilograms of CO2 per ton of olive pomace. And this may decrease the carbon footprint, may increase the carbon footprint of the reference case, and may increase the improvement of F-cube production system. And so we have that the final numbers, kilogram CO2 per kilowatt hour, are with an improvement of 0.46, which is 275% respect to reference case. You have to consider that the goal of the project account for 50% of improvement. So we are much more higher that goal. Very shortly about orange peels, we made the same analysis, and the comparison was in between the pulp and paper biosludge case study and olive pomace case study. Indeed, we can say that there are different industrial intensity of the systems. Pulp and paper biosludge is a very industrialized process. The olive pomace production system referred to a system which is very close to agriculture producer, and so a less intensity of industrializations. And so the improvement of the F-cube production system in the olive pomace case study is much more evident. Okay, so about orange peels, the results is also in this case very good and very favorable, because the carbon footprint that we can consider as improving is of the order of 500%. So it's 10 times more than expected results. Another analysis that we made, and is very important for the commercial upscaling of the project, is the pellet evaluation according to the Renewable Energy Directive sustainability criteria. And for this, we analyze the emissions that are in charge to the pellets before the conversion to electricity by this formula that I not comment here. And a second calculation about the emissions correlated to the commodities that come from the energy conversion of the pellet, which is the electricity in our case. And the results also in this case was very interesting, because the pellet has in charge a carbon footprint of in grams of CO2 per kilograms of pellet of 666 for pulp biosludge, 152 for olive pomace, and 102 for orange peels. This carbon footprint through the conversion into energy gives a emission saving respect to a fossil fuel comparator, which account 183 grams of CO2 per megajoule of the commodity, of electricity, gives three different numbers that are very interesting. So emission saving for pulp and paper biosludge is almost 50%. The olive pomace account for 89% and orange peels 91% of emission saving. And that has some practical consequences, because the RED directive state that to be claimed sustainable, the the biomass fuels and the electricity produced by this have to guarantee a emission saving of at least 70% in the case of plants which are operational from 1st of January 21 to December 25, and at least 80% of emission saving for installation after the January 2027. So that means that only the biopellet that is produced by the olive pomace and orange fields can claim to be sustainable. And this means that the electricity which is produced by this kind of biomasses, densified biomasses, can meet the objective of the European Commissions in terms of energy biomass fuel from renewable sources, can be considered as measuring compliance with the energy obligation on the member states, and are eligible for financial support of eventual available source. So that's very interesting. Another point to consider is the annual results of the data that we have been provided so far. And so we see that, going to the bottom of the table, the early saving of the single biogenic streams are about climate change, about 21,000 tons per year of CO2 in case of paper biosludge, more than 9,000 tons for olive pomace, and almost 4,000 tons for orange peels. And that's very interesting because, first of all, the environmental positive impact of the production system on the environment, but also because, for example, in case of olive pomace production system, this could be translated in an additional income for the olive mills in terms of certified carbon credits, which can be very important for them because they have a seasonal operational season very short, and so they can contribute to the sustainability, financial sustainability of the production system. Yes, this is what I said until now. Now, just if I have some minutes more to, okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And something about social life cycle assessment. That's another interesting point, because talking about social impact is very something slippery, and sometimes a lot of discussions, but no quantified data. And it was our challenge to put together a methodology that could quantify the socio-economic impact, so the potential improvement of social condition and of the overall socio-economic performance of the production system. And this has been measured as negative impact as a risk, of positive impact as a benefit. So to do this, we used the UNEP guidelines 2020, and also the model of LCA that we have performed with the environmental study, and combined with the social hotspot database, which provide information about country-specific economic sectors, which relate to the production system. In a way, it's possible to define a medium risk hour equivalent for each production step of the systems. And this risk hour equivalent, which a measure of the work intensity, labor intensity for each step of the production, is expressed in a currency which is US dollar at 2011 value. So we apply this ordinal scale of value with four categories, from low risk to very high risk. The scale is balanced out the medium risk, so the very high risk is 10 times respect to the medium risk, and the low risk is 10 times less respect to the medium risk, which score 1. Another activity performed in the framework of the social LCA is the stakeholder engagement, by which we validate the model that we implemented with the CIMA-Pro and social hotspot database. And with the stakeholder engagement, we contact 44 stakeholders potentially interested and involved in the production system, and of which only 19 replies, which is 43% of the sample, and it's not at all bad result. And from this, we identify the impact category more relevant for the study, which are local community, value chain actors, and society, which are breakdown in subcategories. Another interesting, not discovery, but an attention that we did in this work is the harmonization between the UNEP guidelines and social hotspot database, because these two systems that are integrated in reality have different explanation of the social risk. So social hotspot database have 5 impact categories declined in 30 impact subcategories. Indeed, UNEP guidelines have 6 impact categories decline in 40 impact subcategories. And so we try to find a harmonization between two systems, because the questionnaire that we used for the stakeholder engagement was based on UNEP guidelines, as usually we do. But then for the modelization and for the automatization of the calculation, we use the social hotspot database. As LCA result for social analysis, we have this data visualization. So data set for country-specific economic sector, the social impact by social impact categories, and contribution analysis in the impact subcategories. You will see in the next slide. So this is the data collection, and you see that from this table, each economic sector is referred to the process production of the F-cube and expressed in the value of US dollars. We find the proper sources for each of these data, and for the pulp and paper biosludge, we use the price, for example, for biopellet was the Zoom from a Swedish Energy Agency, which provide the cost of the biopellets per megawatt hour expressed in Swedish crown, and we have to make a conversion. And so we have, as finally, first data visualization, that for Swedish system, the impact is negative. That means that the pulp and paper biosludge production system has mainly benefits from the introduction of the system in the economic sector of Sweden. And here, break down the impact categories in the production phases. We see that the main adverse contribution comes from tar wash and the watering and from biopellet production, which is easier to read in this graph. And we see that on the left of the graph, you have the benefits that the production system provide to economic sectors. And on the right side, you have the positive social impact, which is the risk. But in the case of pulp and paper biosludge, this risk is very small, and so it's very it's considerable acceptable. This is the breakdown of these impact categories in subcategories. It's quite complicated, but we see by this graph that there are three main impact subcategories that give the contribution as largest contributor to the impacts, to the benefits. And they are wage assessment, injuries and fatalities, and democracy and freedom of speech. We will comment later this. And you see that the positive risk, and so the social risk, which is accounted by biopellets and tar wash and the water, is however low risk. About olive pomace, we made the same methodology applied, and so we skip to the results. As you see, for olive pomace, we have any benefits in the framework of Italy, at least, of the economic scenario of Italy, but only social risks. And they have quite, I mean, in my feeling, it's a little bit upsetting, but we see here that we have a lot of problem with the categories that refer to the healthy and safety sector, which are mainly the 2A, occupational toxicity and hazard, and 2B, injuries and fatalities. And this is the real outcomes. You have to think that in Italy, we have victims on workplaces around 100 a month. That means three persons a day die in workplace. And so also this system contribute to create a risk in this context. However, the level of the risk that we have measured for these specific sensitive impact categories is medium risk. And so it's made possible to find a measure for compensation and to mitigate the social risk. Okay, general conclusion, and then I finish, I promise you. In Sweden and Spain, the treatment provide large benefit and small risks, except with the exception of the biopellet production for electricity generation in Spain, where the risk rise up to medium level. And on the contrary, olive pomace case study provide adverse contribution in the most of the impact categories. However, let me say as Italian researcher, that also in the Italian scenario we can find some optimistic points, which are referred to the, for example, smallholders impact category. In fact, that means that refer to small farmers and the agricultural sectors, in which this production system can reduce the dependency of the system from third party of the industrial sector and leave the value of the biomass considered in the system which is more close to agricultural producer than to the industrial sector. And that's, I think, is very positive and contribute to the energy democracy that it's important for our results. So with this, I finished. Thank you, everybody. And see you. Open to questions.
Yes, any questions from the floor?
A lot. In your mind, I think.
Okay, we have one online. So someone just quickly asked, why is, in terms of the social LCA, why is US dollars used?
you use currency to express a social impact. That's the point. Because the social LCA methodology consider the, as I said before, the labor intensities expressed by the value of the products that this labor produce. And so finally, a characterization model of the social hotspot database referred the currency, US dollar, to the labor intensity necessary to produce that kind of product. And that's why we use economic value to express a social impact. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.